Hello everyone! Welcome to Untold History, the channel where we explore the most intriguing and lesser-known events in world history. Today we travel to the Middle East of the 12th century to discover an uprising that shook the foundations of one of the most powerful dynasties of its time, the Rebellion of the Emirs, a forgotten episode that challenged the power of the Ayyubid Empire in Egypt and Syria. To understand this event, we first need to place ourselves in the context of the Ayyubid Empire, a political and military entity that emerged in the second half of the 12th century under the leadership of the legendary Saladin. Saladin, famous for his campaign against the Crusaders and the reconquest of Jerusalem in 1187, was not only a skilled military strategist but also a visionary ruler. However, as often happens in history, Saladin's death in 1193 unleashed a series of internal tensions that threatened to dismantle the empire he had worked so hard to build. The Ayyubid Empire encompassed vast territories that included Egypt, Syria, Yemen, and parts of Mesopotamia. His death left a power vacuum in a political system that relied heavily on the leader's strong personality to maintain unity. Although Saladin had established his sons and relatives in key positions within the empire, his successors shared neither the same vision nor the same charisma as he did. This opened the door to the ambitions of the local emirs, who sought to take advantage of the weakness of the central structure to expand their power. The uprising of the emirs must be understood in a broader context of rebellions and internal disputes that characterized many medieval dynasties. These, who served as governors of key regions, were often nobles or powerful figures in their own territories, and although they were under the authority of the sultan, they exercised significant autonomy. The death of a central leader like Saladin often meant that these local figures would attempt to expand their power. This dynamic not only weakened central power, but in many cases led to lengthy internal wars that left territories vulnerable to external invasion. One of the main results of this fragmentation was the rise of the Mamluks, a military group of slaves that would eventually take control of Egypt and much of the former Ayyubid Empire. The Mamluks, initially soldiers in the service of the Ayyubids, took advantage of the collapse of the central power to consolidate themselves as the new dominant force in the region in the mid-13th century. The inability of Saladin's successors to maintain the internal cohesion of the empire paved the way for the fall of the Ayyubids and the emergence of new powers in the Middle East. The Ayyubid system, based on decentralization and regional control by the emirs, was already inherently fragile. The emirs began to openly challenge the authority of Saladin's family. These emirs controlled large territorial areas and commanded their own military forces, giving them considerable power to resist any attempt at centralization. The empire was divided between his sons and other relatives, which fueled internal rivalries. Al-Aziz Uthman, one of Saladin's sons, inherited the throne of Egypt, while his brother Al-Afdal ruled in Damascus. This division, far from guaranteeing peace, sowed the seeds of discord. The emirs began to question the legitimacy of the heirs and, seeing the weakness in the leadership, saw an opportunity to expand their own power. Between 1194 and 1196, several emirs rebelled against the central government, particularly in Egypt and Syria. These local emirs, who had amassed considerable power during Saladin's reign, began to challenge the authority of Al-Aziz Uthman, Saladin's son and ruler of Egypt. Among the most prominent rebels were some of Saladin's former allies who now saw an opportunity to establish their own control over vast territories. The rebels found support within certain factions of the empire, taking advantage of the tensions between Saladin's various successors. Al-Aziz Uthman faced a complex web of alliances and betrayals, where he not only had to deal with the rebel emirs but also with the possibility that his own brother, Al-Afdal, could take advantage of the situation to expand his control over other regions. To confront the threat, Al-Aziz resorted to a combination of diplomacy and military force. In a first attempt to quell the rebellion, Al-Aziz tried to negotiate with some of the emirs, offering concessions in exchange for loyalty. However, many of the rebel emirs were already determined to establish their own rule and were unwilling to give in. Faced with the failure of the negotiations, Al-Aziz mobilized his military forces. During the 2 years of the conflict, Egypt and Syria were embroiled in a series of battles and skirmishes that tested the stability of the empire. Although the rebellion failed to expand on a large scale, the rebels put up significant resistance, forcing Al-Aziz to maintain a prolonged campaign. Finally, after 2 years of fighting, Al-Aziz managed to defeat the rebel Emirs. Using superior military tactics and consolidating his power base in Egypt, he managed to quell the rebellion and re-establish his authority. However, the victory was bittersweet, since although the uprising was crushed, internal tensions remained latent. Family rivalries and the ambition of the local emirs continued to undermine the stability of the empire, contributing to its eventual disintegration. Despite its military failure, this rebellion had lasting consequences for the Ayyubid Empire. First, he highlighted the difficulties faced by Saladin's successors in maintaining the unity of the empire. The emir's challenge reflected the deep internal divisions that arose after the founder's death, and which would continue to destabilize the region for decades. The uprising also anticipated the fragmentation of the Ayyubid Empire, which in the following decades would split into several minor states. The lack of a strong central authority allowed local factions and independent emirs to begin to exert increasing control over their territories. This fragmentation facilitated the eventual invasion of the Mamluks, who would take control of Egypt in the mid-13th century. This event is a reminder of how even the most powerful empires can be weakened from within by the ambitions of their own rulers. Power struggle among the emirs not only undermined the stability of the Ayyubid Empire, but also exposed the weaknesses of a system based on decentralization and personal loyalty to a charismatic leader. Once that leader was gone, the cohesion of the empire quickly crumbled. This event demonstrates how local interests can challenge central power in times of crisis, and how rebellions, even when they fail, can have a lasting impact on the political configuration of a region. It also makes us reflect on how internal rivalries can destabilize even the most solid empires, sowing the seeds of their eventual collapse. Although the goal of overthrowing Al-Aziz Uthman was not achieved, the conflict left an indelible mark on the history of the Ayyubid Empire and the medieval Middle East. The struggle for power within Saladin's family and the ambition of the emirs anticipated the collapse of an empire that, at its height, had been one of the most feared and respected forces in the region. Thank you for joining us in this analysis. If you liked the episode, be sure to subscribe and activate the bell for more episodes in Untold Story. Until next time.